Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 7th session at Next Innovation Week US edition. Today we have a very interesting discussion in front of us, definitely, which is how to combine digital and humans to build lifelong relationships with customers. Together with me, I have 3 of our panelists. And unfortunately for Sheila and Richard, we have some camera issues, but at least we hear each other, and definitely we will take your wisdom words at the end of the day. So to introduce the speakers, very welcome to Richard Marcel, the Chief Customer Officer from Conversational Health. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Sheila Patel. Hi, Sheila. How are you?
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And Paul Murasko from IPSEN. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hello, Daria. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
So the main abstract or the theme which we will tackle today is, as said, how to combine these digital and humans to build and create lifelong relationships with customers. I would definitely say that this is currently a very hot topic, very hot theme. And it goes even into customer experience, into AI, into different fields, right? But I would say that COVID definitely triggered the fundamentals of this movement or statement, however you would like to call it, and that we definitely are entering in a new era of pharma interaction. And that is why we today would like to tackle these crucial topics and needs. But before do that, let's see who we have today in our audience. So I would like to launch a poll with a question, quite simple one. What functional area do you represent? Either commercial, metaverse, clinical trials, technology, or other. We can spend like 40-45 seconds to that, and then we can move forward with our discussion. 20% of the people voted. Okay, let's wait for further development. What's your guess, Sheila, Paul, and Richard?
Lots of commercial people.
Fully agree. And I believe you will be definitely right very soon. Okay, so I will close the pool and launch the results, which are, as Richard estimated, 35% commercial, 35% other. What should be other? Metaverse 15 and technology 10. So I would say a very interesting audience here today, and definitely we see that commercial people are very interesting in the movement how to build these lifelong relationships in the new digital ecosystem. So let's move forward with the presentation, and we close the pool as you saw. And this is that we all know that this year is actually canceled in overall when it comes to any kind of life activities, and it really shaken the whole industry, but humankind as well. And I would say that COVID accelerated, triggered, or is the catalyst for the whole digital transformation, as we all know. These scenes are quite common across the globe, which means we are all together in this and walking in the same shoes. However, we would like to see how your business actually transformed during this pandemic. So therefore, let's move forward to our second pool question, which is how significantly has your business transformed itself because of the pandemic? We have 3 possible answers, and the strat in the first and second answer is core strategy. Once again, we can spend like 40 seconds, 45 seconds for that, and then we can move forward to our next discussion. Okay, let's see. The results are going in. Well, currently we have 100% for one answer. Not anymore. Okay, let's wait for 10 more seconds.
Either that or people are still transforming, or they're busy transforming.
Could be, exactly. Or thinking to transform, right?
Exactly.
So close the pool, share the results, and we have a lucky winner, which is we have reimagined and transformed some of our customer strategy. How would you comment on that, Paul, Sheila, and Richard?
I don't think that's surprising, Dario. I think there has been probably across life sciences, particularly probably within pharma where I am, there has been some success, and there's been certain aspects that have been transformed in the last, say, 7 months. But it's not a complete transformation by any means, and I think there's a number of companies that are still trying to figure this out.
Absolutely. Sheila, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, helping our clients through transformation has definitely been a shift for us. And I think it's, you know, kind of the earlier side in terms of really seeing what we can do for a lot of our customers. So I think that consistency of that 27% is still there, where the strategies are being laid out, and then the execution of some of this will go into next year.
Richard?
Yep. All good. What a nice segue into the next slide, right? I mean, this sets up where we are today and where we need to go in the months ahead, and pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Speaking about the next slide, we all know that customer engagement changed a lot, and it will definitely change in the upcoming years, not just the next upcoming year, 21. And here I would like to pass the stage to Richard, and he promised to give us some very interesting and fresh insights about that. So Richard, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So thank you, Dario. And I think this is where we're going to jump in the more interactive portion of the piece. I think as the purpose of today's presentation is not to dwell on the pandemic, but really rather focus on the bigger theme and the opportunity around building lifelong customer relationships with some emphasis on bridging commercial and medical scientific, and certainly combining humans and digital. I think the backdrop of 2020 drives and forces a lot of that, right? I mean, point number one, we've heard Dr. Fauci this week tell us that, yeah, we'll start normalizing at the end of Q2, Q3. That's still 6 to 7 to 8 months away, right? So that means it's business as unusual till then. And frankly, on the back of that, I think number two, it's very clear that customer behavior has already changed, will continue to change. I mean, you guys have all seen the stats from IQVIA, Capgemini, McKinsey, and more, right? Physicians and patients have deeply adapted already to virtual engagement, some for the better, some for not, but all those behaviors will carry moving forward. I think what's interesting in the context of number three is that whatever were really long-term, multi-year digital transformation plans for life science companies are now being executed in months, right? Not years, months. And that will likely continue well into 2021. So I think as per the poll, Dario, I think as we look at the results, I think for all of us, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's work in progress. And I think for us to move and transition to more digital forms of commercial operation is just a work in progress for us. So let's talk about some of that stuff as we head into the next few slides.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Richard. I think you made a very interesting introduction for the next upcoming year, that customer engagement will change and that customer behavior is already changing, and customers are demanding different information sources. For instance, per day, we all know that Dr. Google is providing for over 1 billion of medical research coming from typical users, which means that the Dr. Google is the most beloved doctor worldwide, right? Mm-hmm. But however, if I can say so, I really read a lot of articles when it comes to going back to normal, or there won't be any normal, etc. And what bothers me is that if you just think about 10 years ago, we didn't have some pretty amazing technology from the iPad, Airbnb, Instagram, etc. Which means, I mean, computing power is also much more stable. Internet power is also much more faster, which means I still have an impression that COVID takes too many credits for the transformation. Yes, it accelerated it, that's for sure. But from my perspective is that we still change year by year, and most probably would change even without COVID, maybe slower, but we would definitely change. But let's hear from your perspective about the customer engagement insights and information flow. Maybe we can start this time with Sheila and passing to Paul.
Sure. I mean, I think we're sitting in an era where we're starting to move from just, customer satisfaction to really moving into delighting the customer, right? And I mean, if you think about it, I surmise this as, well, what does that mean? What does delighting mean? Well, I think of it as that customers, when they're interfacing with the healthcare system, they want a real conversation. And what I mean by real, an acronym, is really that, one, with the R, they want a relaxing kind of conversation. A lot of folks are dealing with the technology, trying to get into, let's say, a telemedicine appointment, or making sure that they've got their mask on. And when they come into, let's just say, an appointment, they want to make sure that, they come, they're relaxed, and they're able to focus on what is going to happen here, let's say, in a conversation with a doctor, right? E, they still want the empathy that they would expect from, this clinician hearing about their situation, their symptoms, whatever it may be, and sort of hearing that the clinician on the other side is stopped with their flurry of schedule and trying to understand what's going on. A, they want sort of an action plan of whatever it is that they want to resolve, whatever symptoms they're coming into this, let's say, appointment with. And L, they want a lasting kind of impression that is left with that coordinated conversation that has happened around their healthcare. And so, I think that thinking about patients even more so as an entity that really needs that empathy right now is something that we're seeing more and more of, and we need the business models to support that. Paul?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I love that acronym of REAL, Sheila. But I think based on the audience here, we probably have a lot of folks that will ask the question, that's what the physicians, that's what the offices need to do. That's how that side of the experience is. What can we do? What can we do to support this? And, Dario mentioned Dr. Google. Dr. Google's been on the increase and is ever present now more than ever. However, even prior to COVID, there's been another very powerful partner in this customer engagement and how to find information and all that, and that is social. Social media has been, and now more than ever, is becoming almost as important as Google. I read some stats earlier in 2020 where, yes, there's still 98, 99% of people checking Google prior to a doctor's appointment, determining to set up an appointment and what to do after an appointment. But what was astonishing to me is that, rates of somewhere between, like 67 and I think it was like 78% of individuals are not just relying on Google, they're going to social media, publicly in social media, or more importantly, their private communities, and saying, geez, should I go see a doctor? This is what I'm finding out. Is this what you experienced as you were starting this journey? And then the stat that really surprised me more than anything is that it was almost 82% of this survey. These folks went back to their social communities and said, hey, this is what my doctor said when I met with them. Should I listen to him? I mean, that's very, very telling and also very scary that you're actually letting population health override potentially what a trained physician gives you. So as members of the life science, pharma, biotech community, we have to understand that engagement. We have to know how to make sure the right information's in the right hands, use of patient influencers to share our data and make sure that it trumps the erroneous data that sits out there on the web. So I would add that to what you were saying, so that we do everything we can prior to even making that physician appointment to aid the customer engagement and the experience.
Thank you, Paul. Richard?
Yeah, no, keep going. I think I want to jump on the next one. I know which slide is coming up, so for sure. I want to build on Paul's point of what can we do as an industry. I think as you look at 2021, but particularly from the point of view of a really a manufacturer, but maybe an HCP, right? I mean, it's as we stare at the calendar and look at 2021. It's funny because somehow still the major medium for us as life science companies to engage come in the form of a detail aid in the hands of a rep or an MSL, right? So I think on the back of the pandemic, I think we had to prepare for really a more fundamental change in how we engage our customers. I think we need to, the stuff that I want to engage with Paul a little bit is how do we create a bit of pull from our physicians? How do we enable self-service, because we know that our HCPs are digitally increasingly savvy, right? There's no doubt that HCPs want to engage the industry, full stop. But we also know that they want to engage it on their terms, right? So that's at the time of their choice. It's in the channel of their choice. It's at their pace. And oftentimes it's like, right now, I have a need right now. Can you help me? And that is super important. So I think self-service is also something we've become accustomed to in every other facet of our lives, right? As consumers, customers, whether it's banking.
Hey, Richard, if I could add to that, absolutely. I mean, we used to say, and I still think there's a group of within our industry that was like, oh yeah, the younger HCPs are digitally savvy. But the old school is just going to still remain that way. Just even as this image depicts, it almost stereotypes that the younger group is going to use this. Right now, it's a reality for anyone practicing, regardless of your age group. And it's actually going to become, the longer COVID remains, as earlier conversations, the more it becomes part of the new norm. And you're right, we have to get away from a pure push to an engagement that consists of push and pull. We need to start using technology. Technology isn't the barrier for us. Technology is something we just need to be comfortable with, to embrace, so that as a conversation, be it, face-to-face, if that is open, or through an email exchange or an interaction with a banner or whatever that case might be, that information then drives the next piece of information sharing, be it either from a push standpoint or the physician knowing that they can then go and pull something from, a portal or these resources. And that requires education, that requires training, that requires, I believe, a lot on us as the manufacturer and the maker of this information, to make sure our reps are trained appropriately. It's a lot different doing a IMVA in someone's office instead of engaging with them on a video chat or through Viva Engaged. Or how do you handle something like we all did this morning, where 50% of us can't actually be on video, and you're not going to be able to see body language when people are talking? How do you engage in that type of situation? So I think it's not just technology, it's training. And we do need to make sure that they have interaction that is not only the push, which I think we're good at, but the pull, which we need to become better at, and the physicians become more comfortable at.
Absolutely. And Paul, what I'd encourage, I'll build on your point. I'd encourage the audience also look at, there's some emerging portals out there that are really nice, right? That bring that to life, that are self-service. It's newer, it's in the last year, and it's stuff that allows HCPs in their time, right? Whether it's weekday, weeknights, weekends, to access on-label, off-label content, gain access to patient service information, trigger in-person or remote visits, get the latest clinical data. It's kind of neat because, to your point, it's a funny, almost like ask Pharma anything, and Pharma will support. And again, not at the expense of human face-to-face relationships, but really complementing beautifully those human interactions. So lots of potential there.
That's all fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm just going to say for our medical colleagues and the others, who knows what those others are, we do have to just be careful as an industry when we support anything that's off-label. I know, even though we need to push innovation and push new ideas, growing up with a sales and marketing hat, I think we just need to make sure as an industry, we, really, if we're going to be promoting this idea that you mentioned, Richard, which I think is a solid one, because every company doesn't need to create their own portal. We just need to make sure that we, limit it to on-label use, and then let, the practice of MSLs, et cetera, discuss off-label. I have to put that hat on, because my credibility on driving innovation wouldn't be there if I ever promote off-label use.
Yeah, I mean, to build on that, especially on social media, like Paul mentioned it, I still think that as so many advantages and possibilities which we as industry and the broader ecosystem have, there are also some quite big disadvantages, like for instance, misinformation, right? And maybe not proper storytelling. And based on that, we received a very interesting question from the audience, which is how can life sciences engage in patient social media journey to add value and also decrease the disinformation? And I think it's a very interesting question, because just as an example, I recently read a very interesting article, which is once we will have the vaccine from Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, whomsoever, the company itself will need to have a tremendous PR team to sell that idea and to have a proper storytelling, right?
Yeah, if I'll start on that one, then everyone can chime in. I agree. However, I mentioned a little earlier the use of patient influencers. I am a big proponent of that within social media. I have never encouraged any of the businesses I've been with to go out and build from scratch. It takes time, energy, tremendous amount of resource and also a quantum leap probably from where a company is to where it needs to go out and build a robust social media community, like a community from that standpoint, and own it. I'm a firm believer that you partner with not only the advocacy groups, which I think we all do, but in the non-advocacy way, patient influencers, that you make sure they have access to your content that is approved content, and let them share within their communities what they deem valuable, because that credibility, that earned media potential of what they share is actually going to, I think, neutralize the negative and neutralize the misinformation that's out there. And it's going to be much more well received by the person reading it, instead of, oh, company ABC just set this out. There's a bias just in it sometimes when that happens. Here, when someone shares it, particularly when there's no payment, it's not like we're paying them for a patient's or sex story. They are just sharing. I believe that's the way to neutralize that information. Richard, Sheila, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, my quick build, Paul, without being too long, I'd suggest that, as you've said, it's just facilitating engagement, right? In the absence of engagement, this is how patients hurt themselves a little bit. They consume anything and everything from unauthorized, uncredible, uncertified sources. I think we as life science industries, whether it's through our spokespeople, our content, our advisors, our networks, have amazing resources for our consumers and our patients. And I think the more we can facilitate access to that, to credible content, to helpful content, I think the better off. I think that's hard though for us to do. There's compliance issues, there's control issues, there's lots of stuff there. but anything we can do to facilitate engagement, as you've said, is super important.
Very good point, Richard. Yeah, Sheila.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's in line with what I've been thinking. I think you know, there's an opportunity here, but mostly it's been covered. So I think we can move on. Actually, I'm excited about the next sort of segment.
Okay, so customer engagement 21. What we definitely learned is that traditional, let's say, competitors coming from tech are more and more entering in the industry. And therefore, we can definitely ask ourselves if potential competitors to HCPs for the next 5 years will maybe United Health or CVS Health or Amazon or Apple or Google, etc. Because we all know that, for instance, the tracing app coming from a joint venture from Alphabet or Google together with Apple really made some very good foundations for the tracing problematic when it comes to COVID. But how do you see this in particular? Will traditional tech enter into life science? Will it incrementally change the industry, etc.? But before that, I really need to mention that this is not something what COVID actually triggered. This is something what is already here for the last couple of years, that traditional tech companies are trying to enter in the healthcare system.
I agree. I mean, if I build on that a little bit, Dario, from my perspective, I think it's learning for us, right? I mean, these are increasingly real and indirect competitors, but competitors like best in class, out of class competitors we can learn from. We can really learn from. I think there's 3 things that are particularly important for us as life science industry. I think the first one is they're very digital first, digital fast, always on mindset, right? Super powerful. They do everything works 24/7, weekdays, weeknights, weekends. And like we talked about earlier, they also have tremendously rich self-service access or self-service assets. I can almost do anything I want on their existing portals. So that mindset is powerful. The other piece is, I think, like all technology solutions, there's just a really neat dynamic improvement mindset, right? So stuff just gets better all the time, whether it's new services at Amazon or new software at Google or new hardware at Apple. Nothing is ever static. It just gets better. So as per the previous conversation 2 minutes ago, imagine if our content and our tools just get better and better and better all the time to engage HCPs and patients. That's how we win. I think as a life science industry, I think without seeing any hand raising from home, think of how dated many of our websites are, resources are, haven't been updated in a while, right? We struggle with speed and innovation in that sense in our industry. The last thing I'd say is the one thing that's really powerful for these folks, and Sheila hinted a little bit around it, is customer experience, but specifically simplicity, how they make it easy for me to access them, right? I mean, you guys, I'm sure all of you are shopping Amazon for the holidays. It is what it is, and a lot of it is not price as much as it's easy to use. It is what it is. And I think Google has revolutionized access to information from HCP and patients and consumers alike. Dario, the reason Dr. Google is so big is that Dr. Google is so easy to use and so accessible. So I think as we look at 2021, as we look at these guys slowly but surely coming our way, how do we bring some of this ruthless efficiency, simplicity, and customer centeredness to how we engage our customers? Sheila, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, totally aligned with that, and certainly, I mean, thinking about, you know, a future where a doctor could go to Dr. Google to sort of, you know, look at some of the product information. You need it to be, you know, very quick, very accessible, etc. I mean, that flip is doomed to happen and is starting to happen, right? As we see that doctors have much less time to sort of do the research, etc. And with Amazon launching Amazon Care, you know, tiptoeing in it, we've seen the technology companies try to get into this, but it does feel like COVID has been an accelerator for them to start to compete almost directly with some of the reps and some of the information that's out there, especially with our HCP communities.
Absolutely. Paul?
I agree with everything that's been said, and I actually would suggests that this was actually in the works well before COVID. I was giving a talk at Penn last year, and we were talking about competitors in the healthcare space. And it was interesting. There was a lot of conversations around, you know, who the competitors are. And it was the traditional competitors of, you know, the companies you normally have a drug against or a molecule against or a product against. And I asked the question, why aren't we worried about Amazon, particularly Amazon? Because I do believe Amazon, you know, early in 2019, told the world that they were going to play in the healthcare space. They bought Pillbox, for example. I believe that's the competitor that we all need to keep on the horizon and be smart about it. You know, a lot of us can't compete with the Amazons and the Googles. My question that I throw out to you is, do you need to compete with them, or do you need to know how to partner with them appropriately and let them do what they do well, and let you know, your company do what you do well, and make that come together to have a terrific engagement experience? I believe the companies that do that will be the ones that win moving forward, regardless of the new normal or COVID. I just believe that's going to be the model that wins in the future.
Thank you, Paul. Maybe just to build on that, it's very interesting. Some of you, actually, I think Paul and Richard mentioned both Amazon, and if you think about, they are definitely very well known for exceptional customer experience and service. But I guess no one from you ever talked with any kind of rep or customer support agent, right? Which is, you know, quite interesting to mention, right? In the meantime, we launched our third poll, which is when do you think the new normal started? And we received enough votes, so I will close the poll and share the results, which is that the new normal or next normal, or however you would like to call it, started last March, or with the lockdowns, right? And 73% of you voted last March. So I would say we all can agree on that. Can we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, but I think absolutely, it definitely, and in retrospect, in 2020 hindsight, absolutely. The flip side is I think we were sure hoping that wave 2 wouldn't come our way this fall, and that things would snap back to normal, or to the old normal, to a certain degree. I think it's very clear that that's not happening ever. There is no snapback to any old normal, for sure.
Yeah, and Richard, I think that point has to truly become common moving forward, because think about it, when we all shut down in March, there was, I don't know of anyone that really thought this was going to go further. A lot of folks, you know, myself included, for at least the first 3 to 4 weeks says, oh, this is a temporary bump, we'll get back. We have to realize that we are not going back to March of 2020. We will get closer to what March of 2020 is, maybe, but we will never go back to March of 2020. And I think everyone has to realize that, because once you do, I think you then set a solid foundation for innovating and moving forward. So that's something I would ask the audience to consider, and make sure that they are the advocates of that message within the organization, because we shouldn't be doing things for short-term COVID situation. This is just how we're going to do business from here on out.
I have to ask to Richard, because he's coming from exceptional solution vendor, conversational health. How was the situation in March and April from the client perspective? I mean, immediately everyone wanted the state-of-the-art solutions. They wanted it fast. They wanted it right now. So what was the situation then? What's the situation now? Can you maybe compare these two very different two waves of COVID?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of dimensions, Dario. I think what we saw from maybe an external perspective is, I honestly, as to Paul's point, I think to a certain extent there was a whole lot of hope that this would be a bump in the road, right? Whether it's just from March, April, May, June, whatever that is, maybe by midsummer, there was almost a funny expectation that by midsummer, things are going to get back to normal. That very clearly has not happened. And I think if anything, it is a new normal. I think March 2021 is far closer to us now than March 2020 ever or is, right? So I think we need to look to that north, that magnetic north is more March 2021. Dario, the other interesting dimension I'd say is Med-Affairs operations had been digitizing for quite a while, right? I think that it's a sunsetting function within pharma companies, and they were well along a digital journey to a certain extent. So if anything, it actually accelerated their work. I think the folks that were caught a little bit by surprise are probably more the commercial operation and even clinical trials, right? Clinical trials came to a screeching halt, and we're still struggling to recruit and engage our patients in this environment. Commercial operation is hard, right? I mean, my goodness, I'd say generally speaking, even up to today, most sales force are probably at most, at best, 50% reach and frequency of where they want to be right now. So there's a tremendous pressure to truly reorganize aggressively into the new year. Again, I think both these operations were hoping that that would be a bump in the road this summer, this spring, summer, and now it's just forcing fairly wholesale change of their operation and their go-to-market approaches.
Definitely. Sheila?
Yeah, agree. I mean, the acceleration of like assessing clinical trials and trying to figure out how to virtualize them has definitely seen an interest level that we've seen to be higher in the most recent months, as well as the commercial side, Richard, as you noted, just trying to figure out, you know, do we redeploy these folks to do something else? Do we, you know, equip them with tool sets, et cetera? And then, of course, there's the reality of just the financial pressures of some of these companies to continue to grow and keep stakeholders happy. So certainly trying to weigh all that in to 2021 has been the top of mind, and seeing a lot of thinking about the budgeting and how to reassess how to plan for this very, you know, again, tumultuous year that's in front of us.
Definitely. So we all can make a consensus that not just pharma, but all industries actually accelerated this whole digital transformation. However, of course, due compliance, we can blame compliance in any way in case. Our industry is far behind many industries. As a concrete example, for instance, simple example, CRM, right? If you compare any state-of-the-art CRM solution in pharma with any outside pharma industry like finance or telecommunications or any other industry, I think we are at least 5 years behind, right? Which means, in any case, digital transformation accelerated. But let's speak, what are those fields in digital transformation which will be accelerated even further, and how this customer engagement will look like next year? Maybe we can start this time with you, Richard.
Sure, absolutely. So near and dear to my heart, and I'll come back to CRM, Dario, because it's almost like you're reading my mind. So good stuff. What I'd say though is we're starting to get to the concept of developing lifelong customer relationships. Also include lifelong digital customer relationship, right? Let me use an HCP for an example. I mean, almost all the way up to March 2020. It used to be that the sales rep was, or the MSL, owned the relationship with the physician, but increasingly that relationship is shifting to the company, right? Because it's the company that engages the HCP broadly, right? Think of on the web and chatbots and virtual assistants and email and call centers and conferences. And frankly, advanced technologies like chatbots literally provide a voice of the company to the customer. So yeah, of course, the HCP continues to have a strong relationship with her rep. That makes sense. But increasingly, the digital portion of that relationship is attached to the company itself. So that's a big change. Secondly, what I'd say is that doctors, HCPs, as an example, really don't care for our organizational structure, right? They don't care to engage sales versus marketing, MedInfo versus access, whatever. The opportunity is for us to engage our HCPs as one company and one voice, And to Paul's point, do it really, really, really compliantly. I think what we need to do is help HCPs, help them find what they need in their channel, their choice at the time of their choice, right? Think of physicians hand raising, literally. Hey, IPSEN, hey, Pfizer, hey, Merck, hey, Bayer, hey, Janssen, hey, Biogen, I've got a question, can you help me? And in that context, I think it doesn't matter whether you're sales, marketing, commercial, or med affairs, what's the compliant way of getting you to what you want to get to? Last thing I'd say super quickly is I think you're absolutely right there. I don't think we have really great CRM technology, right? IQVIAs or Vivas or Salesforce and others, but we haven't flexed their muscles yet, right? Every time we interact with an HCP, particularly digitally, in chatbots, virtual assistants, email, conferences, we should be almost like air quote, remembering those interactions like a human would, so that the digital enterprise, the digital relationship can build on some of that. To your point, that's being done in many other industries today. We just need to make that medical, regulatory, legally compliant in our world and start engaging in that way.
Good point. Paul?
Oh, I agree. I think we need to use AI and machine learning wherever we can. You know, I mean, there's so many companies that aren't even doing the preliminary next best action, you know, within Viva, which, you know, to Richard's point, we're not harnessing the CRM platforms we might be using are powerful enough for us to do more. We just, you know, we buy the Cadillac and drive a Kia. You know, I mean, that's, you know, an analogy I use all the time in organizations. And, you know, I firmly believe I've been, you know, trying to change the definition of NPP even prior to COVID. You know, it always bothered me when I entered pharma, the whole term NPP of non-personal promotion, because I'm like, what does that really mean? And now more than ever, MPP should stand for new personal promotion. What we can do digitally, you know, how we can leverage data, garner insights from data, from past interactions, from what our customers have done. I would suggest that interaction, that next interaction, is just as personal as being in a room with someone having a conversation the traditional way. So I in full agreement to Richard's comments.
Sheila?
Yeah, so when I started thinking about lifelong customer relationship, right, I was brought to an example for my son who was 7 and needed to have an online telemedicine interaction around some symptoms he had. And I mean, just him interacting with this person, this doctor on the other end, and seeing him see that be one of the first sort of interactions in his life, right, in terms of having a problem and having to seek it. I mean, he's not going back to going to an office visit where you know, get shouldered in and then go to the room and wait for, they'll be right back and they never come back, right? And what I thought of there is a couple of things. One is, you know, there is another person in the ecosystem that we're starting to see more focus on, which is the caregiver, right? And the caregiver being me in this case as the guardian of this child, with some of the longer term chronic diseases that we're seeing, there's caretakers now more involved in the relationship, as well as with COVID. Obviously, there's an inability there's going to be an ability for caretakers to really be a part of this situation. So it's not just building a relationship with that person, but also their group, their caregivers. And so the conversation needs to be, you know, expanded to that. And then in terms of sort of matching the AI and what have you, you know, Capgemini obviously focuses on a lot of these technologies. And what we're really seeing is trying to really make it more specific, right? Those are great buzzwords, but trying to think about which are the use cases, the specific pieces, what is those specific, what we're calling NBE, the next best experience. that person or that caregiver or that doctor should be having is really the focus that we're seeing a lot of the pharma companies really trying to get out of their CRM systems, marrying it up with AI, marrying it up with machine learning, and really trying to get the data across, a particular patient profile to be in sync so that they can understand how to create that next best experience.
Good point. And based on that, especially about the telemedicine case, I would say that the average consumer today in every industry is more or less spoiled, especially the younger generations, which means that we all want fast, instant information. And this is something what we definitely can expect in healthcare, to have like a Netflix built on system which is working immediately. And speaking about Netflix, I really need to mention I recently read an amazing biography coming from Robert Iger, the former CEO of Disney, and he transformed a dinosaur, of course Disney, by introducing Disney Plus, or the streaming service of Disney, and which means old-fashioned industries like Disney has been, they're also able to change, they're also able to do these incremental necessary changes, which I believe also can be done within our industry. So to build on that, let's hear what do you think about this next big instant engagement touch points with our customers. Paul, maybe we can start this time with you.
Sure. I think, I struggle with this, Dario, and I say that because we are surrounded by the Uber examples, Netflix, we all read the business cases of how no one thought you would go, to a box to get a rental or have something sent home to you, and Blockbuster wasn't worried. I mean, they all are there. And yes, we should learn from them and we should grow with them. And maybe this is me being not the old guard, because I strive to innovate and drive, but how pharma just doesn't automatically become the next Uber-like experience. I do believe we have to constantly look at engagement, customer engagement, customer experience, the UX of things, to make sure that we are giving, and this is an older term, but Amazon-like experience in anything that folks are looking for. But I would suggest that at the end of the day, we strive not to be delivering the next Netflix experience or the next virtual reality experience, because that's so hot. We make sure we understand what our patients and caregivers or HCPs need.
Exactly.
And deliver assets that meet that need in the appropriate channel or the appropriate tactic. And that could be something that exists today, or that could be something that we do have to bring in. But that's kind of where I don't automatically jump saying, hey, we have to revolutionize. Because right now, we're not tapping into probably 50% of what we can do with current platforms that we talked about earlier. So, that might be the only time you guys hear me be less hesitant about jumping and getting farther ahead, because I do believe we all can improve with the tools that each of us have in our organization today.
Absolutely.
And then say, okay, then what comes next? Because sometimes you do have to, crawl, walk, run. And I'm afraid the shiny object sometimes gets in our way, and we want to jump to run, and that's why we fail.
Richard, Sheila?
Yeah, before I'll hand it to Sheila in one sec. The one thing, so I'll build on Paul's point a little bit. I think part of it, if I use a really bad, simple analogy, would be the duck on water, right? So from the surface, customer experience strategy, understanding of that needs, the duck is calm, right? We know the customer and the customer need, product or condition really well, and it should be so easy for us to engage and then engage with us on that basis. To Paul's point, but below the water, that duck needs to be paddling furiously. This is where better technologies, better workflows, better engagements, whatever, all of that brings that to life. When you think of Uber, Uber is just that, right? The duck on top of the water is just the ability to go, okay, get me a car here in a minute from now. But underneath, there's lots of electronic technology stuff that's happening that is enabling that. We've got to become, I just think we have to fear technology a little less to truly enable that simplicity of customer experience. Sheila?
Yeah, I agree with both sentiments. It doesn't just, come together so quickly, and there's a lot that needs to be done internally to kind of create for that. And then there's also that perspective, right? That, I mean, technology is great, and Netflix and Uber is fairly accessible to people, but certainly there's that digital divide, especially in the healthcare industry, that we need to be reminded of. That, hey, that this may not work for everyone, right? There's still a lot of folks that are being left behind that need to have some more of the traditional, more simplistic tools so that they can, be a part of the ecosystem and get the rightful treatment that they do. So it's important to segment, I think, your approach as well.
Next team, very important to mention is that we need sometimes to break these huge silos, these business silos inside our organizations. And we all see and know that maybe the biggest shift, what we will see is this transformation from push to pull, and maybe a transformation from human to human to digital, or to both, right? So speaking about this, how do you see this particular let's say fields of interactions for the upcoming years, so in the next normal, not in the new normal? Sheila, maybe this time we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think a lot of the emphasis starts and ends really with that human, right? So we're all going through this. We all have this simplistic needs. I think you mentioned that, Paul. And, trying to connect that with digitally, trying to figure out what that need is and marrying it with the want, I think is really going to be key here as we think about 2021. Richard, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll build on your point or on the points we've been making for a little bit. I think if I simplify it a little bit, competitive advantage may come from being the easiest to access and the most helpful in doing so, right? So, and for our customers, that's probably at the time of their choice, channel of their choice. Again, weekdays, weeknights, weekends, it is what it is. I think, how do we do that? I think you guys have just said it really well. First and foremost, we got to start breaking down organizational silos. Our customers don't care. They don't care. They want to access IPSEN, Bayer, Pfizer, Merck, whatever. They want help. It's not a group. It's not a channel. It's not one. I think we as companies also have to be careful that we're not protectionist, right? We've all grown in the industry. I grew up at J&J or Johnson & Johnson, and wow, it's sales versus marketing sometimes. It's commercial versus med affairs. And at the end, no, it isn't. It's about serving the customer. I think we really have to think hard about pull, right? And not be pedantic about it. Self-service and pull are really, really important. In the absence of us doing it well, doctors, consumers, patients go to Google. And we know that Google is not a great source of information for the uninformed, right? So dangerous a little bit. I think where we're getting better at and need to accelerate is maybe also engaging across many, many, many channels, right? So sales reps are key, they're not going away, but we've gotten way better at webinars and remote detailings. We're introducing chatbots. Heck, some piece, keep it in perspective that some HCPs are literally virtually running their practices today digitally, right? They will want that level of engagement with us as well. So, and last but not least, not to belabor a point, we've got great tools in the garage, right? We've got Paul's Cadillac is ready to go. Let's use it to what it's capable of.
Thank you. Paul, final words?
I don't have much more to add. Richard and Sheila nailed it. The only point I would, stress is we need to take commercial. When you see the commercial to MedInfo, I think what we need to do is really look at what was traditionally commercial tactics. the use of search, for example, the use of, patient influencers, things that were traditionally marketing or commercial tactics, and realize that there's a opportunity to use that, not only when you look at the medical affairs side of the house, but when you look at the clinical. How do we recruit people for trials? How do we get, the right patients and caregivers involved with trials before we even start the trials to actually help form that? I believe we have to start really broadening our experience, but at the end of the day, I can't stress enough that every organization needs to maintain that humanistic part of what makes them and realize that everything we do should be for the patient. Even when we're connecting with an HCP, we should be connecting with the HCP because that HCP is going to help improve a patient's life. And as long as we keep that as our North Star, I think we can continue to challenge these 3 areas and move from the left to the right.
Thank you, Paul. And unfortunately, we came to our end. So as a final verdict, I would like to repeat ourselves and to summarize this session with maybe 4 most important takeaways of today, which is definitely that COVID won't go away next year. Hopefully, maybe the year after, we will see. I think that we all know that humans are very bad at predictions. Second thing is that definitely HCPs, patients, and consumer behavior significantly changed this year with a progress for change next year. The next normal will be a step function different than last 10 years for sure. And hard work, I think, is the only thing which will save us, and we still need and have a lot of hard work in front of us. So Paul, Sheila, Richard, really thank you very much for this very interesting discussion today. That's my last moderating discussion at Next Innovation Week US edition. I'm passing the stage to other colleagues. And thank you once again. Hope you join us on some other sessions, and make sure you subscribe to our next YouTube channel as well. So thanks once again, and take very good care.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.